Nick Wright of Sports Radio 610 in Houston joining us with Armen Levack on 104.5 The Team. Nick is the morning show co-host. So, Nick, appreciate you jumping on in the afternoon with us as well. And the Rockets fall last night in Game 5, and they're now done. Nick, it looked like they just kind of ran out of energy towards the end of the series.
Yeah, I think that played at least a part here. What I think the biggest story, unfortunately, of Game 5 is James Harden answered. Game 4 might have been, all things considered, the best game of his career. And Game 5, all things considered, absolutely unequivocally was the worst game of his career. So, I mean, to me, sometimes sports are complicated. Sometimes they're very simple. When the runner-up MVP and the best player on your team has 11 more turnovers than field goals made, you're not going to win that basketball game, especially when you're playing a historically great team like Golden State.
There was a time during last night's game Dwight Howard looked like the real Dwight Howard. Is there hope for the future, knowing that he can still put a team on his back once in a while?
Well, like anyone that's hoping for Dwight to be something different in year 11 than he's been in years 1 through 10, I think those people are fooling themselves. He's never going to have a fully refined offensive game. The player that we thought he might turn into back in 2009, that's not going to happen. With that said, his whole career, he's been tremendous in the postseason. This year, he averaged 16 and 14 in the playoffs. Last year, in a much shorter sample, obviously, he averaged 26 and 14. I mean, even that terrible year with the Lakers, he averaged 17 and 11. And his last year with Orlando, during the postseason, he averaged 27 and 16. Like, Dwight's been a guy who has always, throughout his career, stepped up in the postseason. And I think what you see now is, if he's healthy, I mean, he missed 40 games this year. If he's healthy, he's far and away the best defensive center in the league because of all the different things he can do. He's a great rebounder, and he's an adequate offensive player, which is essentially what he's been the majority of his career.
Nick Wright out of Sports Radio 610 in Houston with Armen Levack on the team. Catch him on Twitter at GetNickWright. The Rockets, the feeling with them, obviously falling out of the conference finals, done this year. So the feeling now, and then what do they do this off season? The expectations of the Rockets' next move and moving forward.
Well, Adrian Wojnarowski from Yahoo recently said, keep an eye on Houston to try to acquire Kevin Love if Love opts out. I find that, that one is interesting to me. I don't know if anything will come of that, but that's interesting. The Rockets will always try to make a splash. They will go after LaMarcus Aldridge. If Kevin Love opts out, they will go after Kevin Love. And what you've got to keep in mind is they have the 18th pick of this year's draft from New Orleans and the 32nd pick of this year's draft, the New York Knicks second-round pick. Those two guys, plus someone such as Terrence Jones, who is much more expendable once Donatas Sabonis gets back, or if they bring back Josh Smith, you might be able to put together a trade package that nets you someone like Ty Lawson. Where they must get better is either point guard or power forward. And at least in my eyes, if they were able to land LaMarcus Aldridge or Kevin Love, they probably become the favorites to win the title.
Nick, the big story coming out of Houston, of course, is the weather right now. How is everything? How is it in Houston at this moment?
Right now, it's fine. We got hit incredibly hard on Tuesday. It was Monday night to Tuesday was really unlike anything I've ever seen. And, I've only been in Houston for 3 years, but it was totally insane. Then got hit a little bit again yesterday, and now it seems like everything is back to normal. Now, when you live on a bayou, essentially, there's always the chance that if the heavy rains come, you're going to be flooded. But what happened on Monday into Tuesday was just insane. 136 billion gallons of water fell on the city. There's not a city in the country that'd be able to handle that.
It's crazy, Nick. I'm from Dallas, and the stories, of course, I have a lot of friends in Houston, just stories of houses flooding, cars flooding. They were so common, too. It was insane.
Yeah, no, and my drive to work typically takes 18 minutes on Tuesday morning. It took over an hour and a half, and I was one of the lucky ones. A lot of people were stuck on the roads for 5-6 hours, and a lot of people got stuck in water. So, yeah, Tuesday was a really interesting day where, we're doing the show, and it's more about the weather than it is about the NBA playoffs.
Nick Wright of Sports Radio 610 in Houston joining us. And Nick, the Texans get Hard Knocks. It was announced yesterday. I think it's terrible for a team. I think it's a distraction. Levack loves the inside look and the insight that you get as a fan to the team. What is the overall reaction amongst Texans fans with the announcement that the team is getting Hard Knocks?
Oh, people are very excited because this team kind of handles the media very Patriot-esque. Bill O'Brien comes from New England, and you don't really get to hear from these guys in any sort of unadulterated sense, and Hard Knocks will allow that. And, I'm going to have to side with Levack here. I think distractions are a buzzword created by the media and coaches. I don't think that, first of all, if you're distracted during training camp, I'm really not that concerned. Second of all, I don't think this will be a major distraction. What I do think Hard Knocks gives you a window to is the personality of the coaches. I watched that Hard Knocks with the Atlanta Falcons, and maybe I'm unfair, but I said, well, Mike Smith can't coach in this league. He has no passion to it. I felt similarly about Joe Philbin, and it looks like Philbin's kind of done a decent job, so maybe it is unfair. I will tell you this. People will find Bill O'Brien fascinating. He's very salty. He's very passionate. He will yell quite a bit. And there's some characters on this team I think people will be interested in.
Nick, it's like reality TV shows. When a couple does a show, they try to find that drama. They try to find that storyline. And amongst the team, I was there with the Cowboys when they were on Hard Knocks. They bring you back in the room, and they ask you all these emotional questions. What was it like getting cut? And how do you feel as the backup and not being named starter? The reality shows draw emotions out of you, man. They create these dramatic storylines that aren't there if you don't have all these cameras and all the production crew. I've never liked the idea of Hard Knocks being with my team,
I understand what you're saying. I happen to not agree with you. I think that I think that people bring up distraction, and yet what is every team's biggest goal? To make it to the Super Bowl. What do you have Super Bowl week? Nothing but distractions. If anything, this maybe prepares you for getting ready for the ultimate goal. Now, I'm not saying I'm right. It's just not how I see things.
Now, see, I'm with you. I'm excited. I want to see J.J. Watt box jump out of the gym. I'm fascinated with his guy, the one he said is going to be the star of this, and that's the center Ben Jones.
Well, yeah, Ben Jones is like a country guy who will do a lot of things on dares and will eat bugs and things like that. I think he'll probably be a star. I think you're going to see a lot of introspective Arian Foster. You'll see Arian Foster writing poetry or painting or doing things like that off the field. And I think obviously the quarterback competition will be a big story, just like the rehab of Jadeveon Clowney and Brian Cushing trying to reclaim Pat's glory will be a big story.
And speaking of J.J. Watt, he lives pretty out loud. He's pretty social media savvy. Is there anything you expect us to find out about him that'll either make us love him more or hopefully find a flaw in him for the rest of us who hate how perfect he is?
I don't think he's going to let you see any flaws, boys. I'm sure he has them, but he's very savvy and he's pretty sharp about not letting people in on that stuff. So if you're looking for, J.J. Watt to have some type of gaffe, I don't see that coming.
Nick Wright of Sports Radio 610 out of Houston. And, Nick, you went to Syracuse. You're also a Knicks fan. Which one of your teams do you have more optimism for next season, Q's or the Knicks?
Oh, well, it's even with the scholarship restrictions, it's got to be Syracuse, right?
Right.
If we're talking about basketball, Syracuse football essentially doesn't exist. But if we're talking about basketball, it's got to be Syracuse. The Knicks, I love the Knicks, but they're just, they're a disaster. I will tell you this, I'm not disappointed that they didn't get one of the top two picks. I think the best player in this coming draft is Justice Winslow, and I don't know how close it is. The idea that you've got to go with the big is such antiquated, old-school NBA thinking that I just don't think has been accurate in years. That I happen to think that that Justice Winslow is the best player, and I think he'll be there at number 4 if they want it.
Now, Winslow's from Houston. I got to see him on the AAU circuit. Did you get to see him kind of grow up as well?
No, not at all. I didn't see him at all when he was down here. I'm just basing this purely off his 1 year at Duke.
Okay.
I think he is who dominates the league. Versatile attacking wings. Those are the best players in the NBA right now. I mean, the best center in the league is probably, depending on Dwight's health, Marc Gasol. And Marc Gasol's probably not one of the 9 or 10 best players in basketball right now. The NBA is just changing. So, I'll take Justice Winslow over everybody.
But you think, Nick, would he mix with Melo?
It's an interesting question. I happen to believe if you're drafted in the top 5, you don't worry about that. You take the best player, and the rest will work itself out. But it's a fair question. Probably D'Angelo Russell is the player that makes the most sense for the New York Knicks. But I just love Justice Winslow. I think he's the one player in this draft most likely to be a star. And if I'm drafting in the top 5, that's the one thing I'm looking for.
Nick Wright out of Houston, Sports Radio 610. Good stuff. At Get Nick Wright on Twitter. Nick, thanks so much for your time today, man. We appreciate it. We'll have to do it again.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.